Welcome to Chapter 2. I did a recording for this, then I decided there were a few things that I wanted to say, so I'm re-recording this. So think about Chapter 1, which looked at what are some of the components that go into being a college student, some of the resources that exist on campus. And now let's start talking about some college classes. All of you at some point are going to take a science class. Every major, no matter what the major is, has a science requirement. I know a lot of people are interested in the dental program or nursing, and that's a very science-heavy program. And so this chapter should give you a couple of good pointers. So what we're doing in this chapter is we're going to start by looking at the brain. Then we're going to move to a concept called mindset, which really is based on how the brain functions. And then we're going to look at the topic of choice, which to me is very closely connected to the idea of mindset. And then I'm going to have you watch a video, which is the beginnings of a theme that's going to run through the rest of the course in positive psychology. Okay, so I need to start by saying I am not a biology expert. I did not take anatomy and physiology in my high school or college classes. I was more of I liked plants, so I did things like botany, and then I took nutrition. But so this is a very scaled down version of the brain. So some of you might read this and say, hey, I already know this stuff because you took it in high school. But let's take a look at this. A couple things I wanted to point out to you is there are links. Whenever you see something underlined, that's a link. So if there's a link, click on it. I also put the links to all the videos in the folder. In the folder that's work for the week, there's a folder that's videos, so you can watch them there. So there's the first page is an overview of what's going on in this chapter, and then we get into the brain. And what I have here is a very scaled down version, diagram of the brain. There are so many diagrams of the brain. I was looking for one that would reproduce fairly well in black and white. So if you want to know more, definitely go online and see the other diagrams that exist. So when you are taking a science class, there's going to be a lot of vocabulary. The same holds true for classes like psychology, sociology, a little bit for history. Interpersonal communication has a lot of vocabulary also. And in many fields, you have to know the vocabulary. So how are you going to learn what these parts of the brain are and what they do? I was a big proponent of flashcards. I used to make them on 3x5 cards. This was in the days before everyone had a cell phone where they could do this. and the good thing about flashcards is you put them in your pocketbook, you have them wherever you are, and when you have a couple minutes, you can quiz yourself. Students have told me they like they like Quizlet to do this. So here are a few of the important words here: cerebral cortex, cerebrum, diencephalon, cerebellum, brainstem. Notice there's a lot of cere words, right? Cerebral cortex, cerebrum, cerebellum. What are you going to do so you don't confuse these? All right, so that's, I'm not going to tell you what to do. I am going to suggest you try a couple of different things and see what works for you. So once we talk about the brain, scrolling. The next thing, okay, at the end of each section, you're going to see wrap up where I ask you a bunch of questions. And these are questions that you can use to check how well you have understood the topics that are covered in that section of the chapter. Then we get to the idea of mindset, which is a theory that was, I don't know that she created it, but Carol Dweck has become fairly famous. She wrote a book called Mindset, where she looks at how people can think of themselves and the world, and she's divided it into a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. And obviously, you can read what she says here, but one of the things that I want to emphasize is people have a tendency to think, oh, well, I have a fixed mindset. I don't like to make mistakes. I don't want to try new things. I feel bad. When someone's really good at something, it makes me feel bad because I'm not good at that thing. And so they assume that their entire life is in a fixed mindset. Or conversely, they think because they enjoy learning new things and they realize that mistakes are just part of how we learn, they think that they have a growth mindset for everything. Probably not. Each of us is a mixture of both growth and fixed mindsets. And so that's important to think about, that it's not an all or nothing. So I have a story about when I experienced a more fixed mindset, and I want you to think about the same thing. Do you have a fixed mindset about something? Do you have a growth mindset about something? And for the discussion, I'm asking everyone to think about areas where they have a fixed mindset and to explore what's going on, and then to ask your classmates for suggestions on things you could do to move to a more growth mindset. Okay, so I have 4 steps for things you can do to have more of a growth mindset. Here's a chart of Carol Dweck's work that looks at a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset in terms of challenges, obstacles, effort, etc. And then there's a wrap up with another link to a video, right? And then this leads to the concept of choice. So choice, the ideas here are based on, let me scroll down a little bit so you can see it. The ideas of Dr. Julian Rotter, who talked about the concept of locus of control. Do we believe that we have control over many of the events in our lives? That would be internal. Or do we believe that there's nothing we can do, it's all outside of us? So I like to use the expression of the coronavirus. So there is absolutely nothing that I can do about the virus itself. That is definitely external to my control. But what is internal, what is something that I can do about it, is I can make sure that when I am in public, I wear a mask. I can make sure that as soon as a vaccine is available, I get the vaccine. I can make sure that if I see, if I have friends who get together all the time and hang all over each other and breathe on each other, that maybe while this is going on, I'm going to stay away. So I'm not saying that we all have control over everything. My younger brother used to get so upset about the weather. Oh, it's going to rain this weekend. There's absolutely nothing you can do about that event. I would argue, and many people argue, that what you do have control over is how you feel about that event. Like, instead of being upset about the weather all the time, he could be a little more zen. He could say, you know what, it sucks, it's going to rain, I wanted to do outside things, I've got plenty of things that I could do inside. So that in a sense ties back to the idea of mindset, because he was very fixed mindseted, if that's actually a word, about the whole idea of the weather. So think about, where do you feel that you have control over your life, and why? And where do you feel you don't have control over your life, and why? Okay, and scrolling down, there's a wrap up there. So once you've read all this, I want you to watch a video. There's a link, It's to a TED Talk that was given by Sean Achor. It's called The Happy Secret to Better Work. Now, Achor is a positive psychologist. This is a relatively new concept in the field of psychology. It started roughly in 1998 when Dr. Martin Seligman became the president of the American Psychological Association, and he said, we do a decent job with some mental health issues. That if we can take someone who is depressed, we can get the right medications, we can help them be less depressed. The same thing with bipolar, a little bit with attention deficit. But one of the things that psychology didn't do up until that time was look at people who are thriving and what can we learn from them and to help other people get to that same level. So that's in a nutshell, that's positive psychology. So Sean Achor has been studying positive psychology for a long time. His focus tends to be on the workplace, but a lot of his ideas can apply to people in the school setting. He does talk very quickly, so I don't expect you to write down everything that he says. If you're finding that he's speaking too quickly, you can always put on the closed captioning. And there in TED Talks, there's always a transcript of what was said, so you can go back and look at that. Basically, he's talking about, he uses the word happy. Generally in positive psychology, the psychologists prefer the term positive, or instead of talking about happiness, they'll talk about well-being. But for its purposes, we'll talk about maybe happiness. I'm thinking that happiness for a lot of us is a choice. We can choose how we feel about situations that we're in. And I wanted to leave you with, if I can find it, this, I bookmarked it so I would be able to find it. So when you are about to take this is an idea from one of Sean Achor's books. When you're getting ready to do the quiz for this chapter or for any work that you have in any of your classes, before you do it, do a 5-minute writing exercise. I know you're thinking more work, right? So anytime you start hearing doubting voices, I'm not going to do well on this quiz, this paper is too challenging for me, I hate math, whatever those voices are, take just 5 minutes to write about things you're passionate and positive about. Your family, your sports, your values, your faith. By actively canceling such internal noise, you can increase your performance on intelligence tasks by 10 to 15%. Right, so try it. I want you to do this experiment for this chapter. Before you sit down to do the quiz, take 5 minutes. It would be good to actually do it by hand. There's a lot of evidence that says when we actually physically write as opposed to keyboarding, it engages our brain more. And I want you to just write about things that are very positive in your life. Okay, so this is chapter 2. I hope that you've enjoyed my somewhat rambling mini lecture. And as always, if you have any questions, either email me, send me a message through Blackboard, or if it's something where you need an answer very quickly, send me a text to my Google phone number. It's not a bother. I do want to tell people that if it's, I turn it off, or I turn the ringer off at night. So if you send me something at 2 a.m, I won't be too happy, but I won't respond to you until 6. So enjoy the rest of the week, and I'll talk to you next week.